Hello, thanks for tuning in. It's Stuart here, talking about what is your record collection worth? What is anybody's record collection worth? And in particular, what is your classical record collection worth? So, I watched a video earlier today from another YouTuber who I thought made a very, very good video about why he thinks that buying records, buying vinyl is not a good investment. And I agreed with, virtually everything that he said. Yeah, but he also spoke a lot about what records are really worth, and they might not be worth as much as you think they're worth, and certainly that is virtually always the case. If you think back to, for any of you who collected stamps, as I did when I was a boy, going back into the 70s, there was and I think there still is, a guide to values published in a catalogue by probably the world's most famous stamp dealer, Stanley Gibbons. I'm sure that virtually all of you, particularly those of you in the UK who are in my age category, will probably remember seeing these large catalogues in the library or elsewhere. And if you had a stamp collection, you might well have, as indeed so did I, go excitedly with your stamp collection and go through very carefully to find out what your stamps were worth. And you would think, oh, right, that's worth 20 pence, that's worth 50 pence, that's worth a pound. Wow, that one's worth £2. And you could very soon think that, in fact, your stamp collection is worth a lot of money. And still, until you take some of those stamps to the local stamp dealer and say, right, in the Stanley Gibbons catalogue, I've got approximately £10 worth of stamps here. I'll sell them to you for £5. And the stamp dealer would take them, look through them, flick through them, and say, well, no, I'll give you 50 pence for the whole lot. And I've done that. I've actually done that as a child, naively thinking that the book price, the catalogue price, would be the price that I get if I took it to a stamp dealer. It did not occur to me that the stamp dealer had to make a profit, and then he would have to sit on the stamps for maybe years before he sold them. And yeah, so the point is that, as this YouTuber highlighted, we now have, thanks to the internet, thanks to eBay, thanks to Discogs, anybody can find out to a rudimentary degree what their records are worth. This is one of the reasons why I got out of big time dealing. For the simple reason that after about the year, probably, when did eBay get going? Because eBay was the real problem for dealers, because anybody could now sell their records on eBay. And I was still trying to buy records locally in the early 2000s, and I was turning up and looking at collections, making offers, and people were saying, oh, I can get more than that on eBay. And I only had a couple of those experiences, and I got out of the business and I went down another route, and I've still got I've got a non-record business which is doing okay, and that's fine. So what I'm doing now with records is, I'm a serious collector. um, I love listening to records. I just like the product. I enjoy the hunt. I love finding records which I've never seen before, which for eBay is absolutely fantastic. I've seen so many records that I'm interested in, and they haven't really cost me too much money. So I am selling records, but it's primarily to pay for my hobby. Okay? So, and I think that there are far fewer dealers out there, probably, who are making money than there were in, say, the 90s and 2000s, for many reasons, not least that a lot of people now can just sell their collections on eBay, or if they've got records to sell, dealers are turning up. They think their records are worth far more than they really are, and dealers are not able to get those records either at all or for a price that could yield them a worthwhile profit. So how do you go about valuing your records? And let's say we've got eBay and Discogs, for example. There's also PopPsych, which I've found to be a useful resource. I say that because, obviously, having been in the business and sort of still in the business, I think that I'm fairly good at valuing records. I've seen enough. I've seen enough of the market in 2024, 2025 now to understand that well and truly, at least in the classical market, the bottom has fallen out in the sense that what a lot of dealers used to make money out of, they now can't make any money at all. So all those 4-digit ASDs, narrowband SXLs that used to sell in big numbers to the Far East, because that's where most of the money was, are now not wanted. They're now not really fetching any money at all, or very little money compared with what they used to fetch. And all the money now is concentrated at the top end on a very, very small number of high value stereos mainly, which has made the market unviable. And let's face it, no dealer is going to pay, say, £2,000 for a Leonid Kogan Beethoven SAX. No, it's just too much money. Even on the hope that they're going to be able to turn that into 3,000, I can't see a dealer paying £2,000. But if you want to buy a Kogan Beethoven SAX or Brahms, you'll have to pay you'll have to pay £3,000. And as a dealer, how are you going to make money out of that? Who are you going to sell to? The people who are paying 3,000 are the very, very serious high-end collectors. They're like the top of the pyramid. There's nowhere else to go. In the 90s, I used to get good prices from Japanese dealers who would take records back to Japan and sell them to the end user, because the end user did not have the means to purchase from people like me and others, because there was no eBay, there was no kind of international market. Okay, I did publish a catalog and I did find a way of reaching those users in the end, because there's a Japanese record magazine, for example, which I found and managed to get through to some of those buyers, those magical buyers who will pay the absolute top dollar price. But by and large, most of the money, is focused on the absolute top end, and the rest of it is really just what I call shrapnel, which is great in a way, because for me as a collector, I'm finding unusual records which I'm able to buy on eBay from anything from sort of £2, a fiver, a tenner, maybe a bit more. So it's really wonderful. But coming back to the original topic, you want to value your collection. Let's say you've got 1,000 classical records. You're wondering how much they're worth. Okay, now you start going through Discogs, or you start going through eBay or PopPsych, and you think, well, for example, I've got some records here. Let's just pick one out. Let's pick this one, which I showed earlier, the video that I made earlier on today. It's Salvatore Accardo playing Paganini Violin Concerto No. 1. You want to know how much that's worth, so you go to Discogs, and you find out, let's just say that an EX copy is selling for £15, and you think, great. So you write that down in your spreadsheet, £15, Paganini No. 1, 2530, whatever, DG, that's worth £15. And then you start going, you think, well, what else have I got? I've got another DG. Got a digital Herbert von Karajan conducting Johann Strauss. What's that worth? You go to Discogs, you go to PopPsych, and you find that more or less the price is about, should we say, £12. You think, great, so far my collection's worth £27. And you go through all your collection and you come to, say, a book price, let's say £4,500, and you think, wow, that is good money. That's what my collection's worth. Well, it might be worth that on paper, but what it's worth in reality is a completely different matter. Imagine if you wanted to sell your entire collection. Maybe because you were fed up with vinyl and thought streaming's the way to go. I'm going to quit this stupid obsession with vinyl, this irrational obsession with vinyl. I'm going to clear it all out. I'm going to raise £4,500. I'm going to buy a really superb amp, and I'm going to stream, etc. Get rid of my turntable, the whole lot, and just commit myself to streaming. And I'll be I'll be £3,500 ahead. That's what you think. Okay, who are you going to sell your records to? 4,500. How do you think you're going to sell them? Good question. What are you going to do? Call in a dealer? A dealer's going to come. Do you think he's going to want to pay you full book price, £4,500 for all your records? And by the way, I should just point out that you may be valuing each individual record more than it's really worth, because it may well be that although a record has fetched maybe £15 at the top end, that if you tried to put that on Discogs, it might fetch far less than that, or maybe it's not in as good condition as that copy that sold. So yeah, there's always a danger of you overestimating the value of your records. You might have the wrong pressing, you might have an English pressing instead of a German pressing, etc., etc. But just coming back to it, so yeah, how are you going to sell your records? Who's going to buy the whole lot? Only a dealer is going to buy all of your records. And a dealer, I can tell you straight away, a dealer is going to want to pay you 10% of the book price. If you're lucky, maybe 15%. And you'll think that you're being ripped off at that. But I don't really think you are. I don't think you're being ripped off at all. Because imagine all the work that that dealer has got to do. He's got to come out to you, go through your records, check the condition. He's got to do the business with you, pay you, get them back to his premises, and an enormous amount of work. And I'll tell you, it could take years and years to clear those records. And a dealer is not going to want to pay you. If you've got a collection that's got, say, £4,500 book value, a dealer's going to want to have them for £500 to £1,000 absolute max. I can tell you that now. And you'll say, no way, you're not ripping me off. Goodbye, I'm going to call somebody else. And that dealer will have travelled maybe 100 miles to see you, and he'll be on his way. You'll try somebody else, and you'll waste another dealer's time who will come out and offer you 500 quid. And then you'll start to realize that actually it's not going to be easy getting 4.5 grand for your records. And you'll think, I know, I'll start listing them one by one on Discogs. So you do that, and guess what happens? You list 100, and after 6 months, you've only sold a dozen. So there you are. You get my point, that your records are not worth nearly as much as you think they are. They really aren't. Most of your records actually are worth absolutely nothing at all, because if you list them on eBay or Discogs, they won't sell, they will never sell, there are too many copies out there, you just won't be able to sell them, and that's just the way it goes. So your records are actually worth a fraction of what you think they are, unless your collection is absolutely packed full of really interesting early stereos in absolutely superb condition. Yeah. And how many of you out there have got collections like that? You've probably mostly got collections like me, where you've got some early stereos, you've got some sort of big hitting records, but most of them are what we would call probably fairly run-of-the-mill fare, which is not going to be easy to sell. So that's it really. That's why the love of the hobby is the most important thing, and not as an investment. I don't really see records as an investment while I'm buying them. For me, the investment is I enjoy having them, I enjoy playing them and listening to them and everything. I enjoy making these videos, and yeah, I also hope to sell some in order to pay for this very expensive hobby. So that's what it's all about. And I couldn't agree more with that YouTuber that buying records is not a good investment. There are other that you're probably better off getting into vintage wines or something like that, but not buying records. He did make some other good points. He was talking about pop music and saying that, for example, with Elvis, his early issues used to be worth a lot more money than they are now, and that's because people who value that artist are now dying out. And somebody who's crazy about Ed Sheeran, modern, say, 15-year-old child, person, or 20-year-old, somebody who's crazy about Ed Sheeran, or I don't know, some of these other modern stars, wouldn't really be interested in Elvis, and is not going to go out of his way to collect Elvis. I think that probably bands like Pink Floyd and others and Queen, etc., will probably fare a bit better. They've got probably more lasting interest in bands like that, because a lot of young people are discovering some of the great artists from the 60s and 70s. Elvis is probably a bad example, but yeah, so the point is, a lot of the baby boomers like me are dying out. We're getting older, and we're not the ones probably. Sorry, let me rephrase that. We are the ones who are keeping the market up, but the fewer of us there are, the less the demand will be for those records. Well, we'll have to see. The question is, all the new vinyl, say Taylor Swift, do you think that in maybe 50 years' time, Taylor Swift will be fetching, there will be a premium market for Taylor Swift vinyl issues? I don't know. That's very, very difficult to say. Will there still be the nostalgic value that people will be prepared to pay big money for Taylor Swift in the same way that, for example, they're paying big money for original issues of The Dark Side of the Moon and other other vinyl, what do they call them? Holy Grail sort of type records, certain issues, private issues, paying really big money, thousands of pounds. That would be really interesting. I might actually do a video on what, say, artists in the 90s who were issued on vinyl are now fetching, to see whether young people from those days who are now growing up and have got money are prepared to spend money on, say, Oasis. I don't know. What is the biggest money for an Oasis vinyl record of any kind? Say a really rare issue. I suspect it's a heck of a lot lower than something like The Dark Side of the Moon, the sort of top prices that they're paying for The Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here, and maybe some of the Beatles LPs. I would suspect that the big money pop records will remain the sort of 60s and 70s issues, but classical's another thing, because classical has stood the test of time. So it may well be that the Kogans and the Oistrakh SAXs are still fetching mega money. It seems to be perceived that these are the records which are a good investment. So it may well be that in time these will still be fetching big money and even more. It may well be that the £3,000 Kogan now in 10 years' time is selling for 30 grand. I don't know. Maybe that will be the case. I'll be amazed if it is, but I'd never thought that a Kogan would go to 3,000. I thought maybe 1,000 to 1,500, but not 3,000. Okay, well, so that's about it. Just to recap, as you probably are aware, it's best not to price your records by going to Discogs and thinking that they're worth more money than they really are. The reality is that if you had to turn your records into money tomorrow, you would get really very little for them. So there it is. Just enjoy the hobby, enjoy the collecting, and if you find a good one now and again that can pay for maybe 100 records, that's fantastic. But just enjoy vinyl while you're alive. Okay, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed that, and look forward to your comments. Goodbye.